My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sivasankaran, Guru Piranyo, fellow Jnanis. Today I'm going to continue chapter 30 of Mahan's teachings on man. And if you see in the last two parts, I spoke about man from the perspective of Mahan. Man here is Homo sapiens, right? This is the modern man. And Swamiji and many scientific work shows that man has evolved over the many years into, the evolution has helped we human beings to develop our brain, which is the hardware that enable us to develop our mind, which is the software, our intellect. And over the hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, the modern man is one of the most powerful and most dominant species on Earth. While thinking human beings have achieved tremendous amount of development, we have developed multiple languages. We have discovered mathematics, logic, science. To some extent, all this knowledge has helped us to become very successful as a species, not only conquering the forces of, understanding the forces of nature, but in some cases, even influencing the forces of nature. There are some positive and there's also some negative impact. We also see that man has become very dominant in nature itself, so much so that, we become so dominant that, many species have had to make its way or give its way to the development of human beings. So in spite of all the developments, you see that, we have encroached into other species' habitat. We have, in the name of development, we have developed many technologies and energies that have caused tremendous amount of pollution that has had an impact on nature itself. And to some extent, with nature's being adversely impacted by human beings, we see that nature itself is reacting. So we are starting to see global warming, pollution, and a whole host of things that are starting to impact many biological lives, including human beings. I believe yesterday was Nature Day, and the United Nations Secretary General Guterres mentioned that we human beings have caused a hell on earth. We see that, recently in India, many people died of heat. We're seeing that the ice caps are melting. We're starting to see many places are being flooded, landslide. We're starting to see a lot of changes in the climate that is changing the patterns of pathogens and viruses. And we're starting to see the emergence of very virulent viruses that are having an impact on many biological lives, including human beings. And one such example is COVID. COVID, essentially, we saw that the mutations of viruses has become very virulent, that millions of people have lost their lives, brought a lot of hardship for people. It brought the economic development model to a screeching halt. Many people lost jobs, livelihood, and their lives. So we're seeing that though human beings have developed to some extent, much of the development also has caused a lot of misery to everyone. So here Mahan also speaks about, while man has the knowledge must be used responsibly. If we do not use the knowledge responsibly, we see that it'll adversely impact us. So Mahan clearly states that we cannot go against nature. We have to go with nature. At the present moment, we have the natural forces of the earth. We have the planetary forces of the earth. But one of the forces is actually human beings themselves. So there is this term that is used by scientists, the scientific community, called Anthropocene. Anthropocene is the period that we are living at the present moment, that human beings' behavior, human beings' development is changing the natural forces, climatical conditions, atmospheric conditions, the ice caps, all that is changing the dynamics within the earth that is starting to impact all biological life, plant life, fisheries, and so on. We're also seeing that, human beings developing new technologies such as plastics and other harmful substances that we use daily. They're starting to also choke our oceans, choke our landfills. And today we are starting to see that microplastics are emerging in our bodies, in our kidneys, in our lungs, in the fetuses, in our endocrinal system that is disrupting our endocrine systems, which, causes, a lot of endocrinal disorders such as diabetes and so on. So we're starting to see that while man has acquired knowledge, sometimes the use of knowledge may not be appropriate. So I spoke about this in the last two parts. And today I want to speak about how do we live in balance? How do we harmonize our living with nature itself? That's what Mahan spoke about. So here are some of the things that we see, that our man-made disasters, pollution, we dump a lot of contaminants into the rivers and the oceans. We have a lot of noxious gas. We throw a lot of garbage around. We have a lot of deforestation. Forest is very important for absorbing carbon dioxide, absorbing pollutants, but we're getting rid of that, and forests, the green cover gives us oxygen. So we're starting to see that which sustains us, we are destroying it. We're starting to see a lot of landfill. Temperatures are very high. We're starting to see a lot of forest fires. If you see in North America, in Europe, every summer now you see forest fires. In Australia, including in our region, we see a lot of haze. This is all man-made disaster. So again, we see that, while man has acquired the knowledge, sometimes the knowledge is not used effectively. Why is this the case? We see that, we have lost our values, our nature-centric values that is embedded in us. Human beings have become more and more greedy. Everything, they want short-term gratification, short-term profits. So here Gandhi says very nicely that, the earth has enough resources for everybody, every man's needs, but not everyone's greeds, a man's greed. So you see that the current development models that we use, the current way of thinking, cannot sustain, life on earth. Scientists say that the rate that we are consuming, we need 2 planets to sustain human life. But we don't have planet B. So what we see is that we are choking the only blue planet in our solar system. So the question then is that, with all the knowledge that we have, where did we go wrong? And I'll talk about what is it that we have missed out. What do great saints and sages like Mahans have to say? Why are the knowledge of the spirit, the values that they inculcate, which is nature-centric, is critical at this current moment of humanity? So these spiritual values that all have embedded, in all the scriptures, they talk about nature, Mother Nature, God is part of nature. All these things are very, to some extent, very subjective. There are so many religious, so many spiritual values. There are so, different values, but if you look at all those values, whether it's spiritual values or secular values, they all come down to the importance of nature, the preservation of nature, preservation of our biodiversity, preservation of that balance of biological life and balance way of living in nature itself. The harmony is in every scripture, in every spiritual teaching, including some of the secular thought of nature itself. So it is very subjective. How do we bring that into our day-to-day life? How do we make that subjective, intangible spiritual values to the core of our own lives? And this is what Mahans and other great saints try to bring, this subjective knowledge of that self or God or the universal personality or divinity or nature down to a level that we can understand and we can put it to practice. So the subjective, intangible divinity is crystallized in a set of values, right? And that values come down to some of the human values, the true human values. And in the early part of the 21st century, the United Nations had something called the Millennium Development Goals. And the Millennium Development Goals was translated in 2015 into what we call Sustainable Development Goals. These are all the human values that are enshrined, that are commonly agreed by 170, 180 countries, that leverage on all the spiritual values and the values of, nature itself. So the 17 values are, making sure that we look after people, look after the planet, look after our economies. So it's about planet, people, and prosperity. So here, things such as, making sure there's no poverty, we eradicate poverty, zero hunger, making sure health and well-being are looked after, both biological and also, human beings, providing good education, quality education, making sure, we have gender equality. In many part of human civilization, women are treated not so well, subservient, but we see that in some societies, women have the life is really tough. So, and women play a key role in sustainable development goals. They are actually the, fulcrum and the pivot of a family. And it's very important to ensure that equality there, the issue of clean water and sanitation. Many people don't have clean water and sanitation. Energy efficiency, providing good jobs is a Sustainable Development Goal 8. Making sure our industries, our innovation and infrastructure are nature-based, reducing inequalities among people. So these are all human rights values, right? Making sure our cities are clean and sustainable, making sure we don't overconsume, responsible consumption, addressing climate action, making sure our oceans are looked after very well. Life on land also is looked after, making sure we don't pollute our land. Sustainable Development Goal 16 is about peace, justice, and strong institution. And you'll see in many parts of Mahan's I Got book, he dabbles, this notion of peace, justice, strong institutions, the role of government, the role of learned people in making sure we have equity, equality, quality education. And all this will not work if we do not work in partnership with everyone, from governments across the globe, national governments, local governments, state governments, community organizations, religious organizations, spiritual organizations such as us, our organization, NGOs, the indigenous population. We have to work with everyone in partnership because everybody has some knowledge. And how do we collectively bring the knowledge together? The sum of the individual knowledge is far greater than the knowledge on its own. So this is the common human values that are nature-centric and embeds that values of the universal values that are captured in all spiritual teachings. So I see that in a lot of Mahan's teachings, he emphasizes this equality and good quality education, the right quality education, and so on. So this spiritual values, which are very, very abstract, that are very intangible, Swamiji brings it down to a set of values, common values, that we can all agree on, no matter where we come from, what practices, religious belief, or spiritual values, or education. We have set of common values that are nature-centric, and we see that these are the agreed values of the United Nations, which is a collection of nations and people that come together. And this need to be articulated into our day-to-day practices. If we veer away from this, we see that we cause misery, and societies will not be able to live in the best possible way. I'm always inspired by great people, right, on what this human life is, because we're talking about we human beings as Homo sapiens, right? Supposed to be the custodian of this earth. We're supposed to be the people that manage the earth for all other species, given that the fact that we have acquired knowledge that is supposed to be wisdom knowledge to be able to be a caretaker for our planet. So here I like this quote by Albert Schweitzer, which is a very, very well-known personality. He says that the purpose of human life is to serve. And this is why we see in Swamiji's teachings, and Guru Sangaran always says, introspection, contemplation, reflection, meditation, and service. So our purpose of our life is actually to be of service to nature, because we are part of nature. Mother Nature is core to our being. So the qualities of Mother Nature needs to be imprinted in our mind, in our thoughts, in all our actions, in our words, and to show compassion and the will to help others. And this is what nature does. You see that when a seed falls, on the ground, nature itself, with all its nutrients, makes it grow. So in that same way, our mind should be fertile to be able to support the vulnerable people, the biological beings, nature itself. And these great words by this great personality should inspire us to look within us, to discover nature and bring that nature-centric quality in all of us. That's what the purpose of life is, to live a life of purpose. So here, what are the set of values? And myself and my colleague, Professor Pervez Ahmed, and Prof. Shanta, who's also here in the forum with us, we've been thinking about this for many years. How do we articulate these spiritual values, this subjective values that everybody have, to a common set of values? And we wrote this paper. If you're interested, I can make this available. You can download it from online. We talk about the 8R values. That is, we have to respect nature. We have to respect people. We have to respect the creator and all the creation and the creative process. We've got to rethink what we do. Why are we in this state? We have got to rethink constantly the things that we do. Is it of value to us and the people around us in our ecosystem? We've got to always constantly rethink. This is what introspection is. We've got to reduce what we do. We have overconsumption. We buy too many clothes. We buy too many things. Consumerism is just gone, too much. So we've got to start thinking, how do we reduce what we do so that we minimize our impact on nature? It means use what we have. So that brings us to this reusing whatever we have, right? There are times that, it may go, oh, well, let's, refurbish it and reuse it back again. It's okay. We got to learn to recycle. We throw a lot of things out, right? I'm sure we throw a lot of food out. lot of, create a compost, and put it into your plants, grow things, right? Recycle, learn to recycle, learn to restore things. There are things that we have, our actions have, made the environment worse or made things. So how do we restore it? How do we rejuvenate or revitalize it? And sometimes we can repurpose things. Things we have used before may not be suitable for what it is. We can repurpose it for something else. So we see that the 8R values are the values that are anchored on that sustainable development goals. Nature has a lot of resources for us, right? But, to support our living. But as what Gandhi said, it doesn't have all the resources for our greed. So if we embrace this nature-centric values, we see that, we're able to utilize nature's resources in a more optimal way to create better value. So this paper, we articulate that argument, anchoring on Swamiji and all these great teachings of how we should, consume things in a very sustainable way, utilize things in a sustainable way, don't waste, right? Whatever we do, we want to make sure that we use it to the best. So here again, give you some examples of, respect of human rights, animal rights, rethinking. So what I've articulated just now is captured here in this, notion of, recycling, circular economy. So it's a different way of thinking, on how we consume, how we utilize, how we interact with nature around us, and so on. So interestingly, you see the elements of this in Mahan's I God book, where he speaks about, scattered in many parts of the books. And I was able to bring it all together in this context so it's easily remembered. So again, so we see that we can play, all the other animals are in harmony with nature except human beings. We overuse nature, we abuse nature, sometimes we really don't care about nature, not realizing that actually it has an impact on us. When nature is when nature is not in harmony, it is going to impact all of us. Today, Prof. Shanta, myself, and others, we've been doing a lot of work on the impact of environmental pollution. We see that cancer incidents are up. We see that, non-communicable diseases are up. We see disruptions of our endocrine system because of microplastics. We're seeing that, those days, certain disease only comes when you're at a very older age. But today we are seeing it in the 20s and 30s and 40s. Interestingly, a recent study in some scientists have shown that, when you see a smoker's lung and a person who doesn't smoke about 40, 50 years ago, very different. The smoker's lung is really pitch black. But today they are seeing the lungs of a fetus, not even born, has a smoker's lung. What does that mean? It means that, that child before it's born has inhaled so much toxic substance equivalent to a smoker that's been smoking for 30, 40 years. By the time the child is born, normally it is said that a smoker takes 20 to 30 years to develop symptoms of cancer. But a child in the fetus is already looking like a smoker's lung. By the time the child is born, we are starting to see at the age of 20 and 30 years old, they're starting to get lung cancer and all the other cancers. So we see that our human activity is having a major impact. So as if nature is not in harmony, it'll have an impact on this. And this is what Swamiji emphasizes a lot in the book. We have to go with nature. We cannot go against nature. Here again, some really beautiful quote by, these great personalities. Says ecology and spirituality are fundamentally connected because deep ecological awareness ultimately is spiritual awareness. I love this quote. We see among people who are very religious, They throw things, they throw plastic, they throw all the things in the rivers and throw everything, contaminating, the rivers and the landfills and so on, not realizing what they are praying is what they're contaminating to. So, I've been thinking about it very, very uh, carefully. Look, we have to be very conscious. And one of the conscious things that I thought of is, we normally light a lamp, in the guru's picture or, in our home temple and so on. I told myself, look, you know what? We're burning things and there's carbon, we are releasing, carbon. So I told my wife, maybe, we have to be nature-centric. Maybe we don't light a lamp anymore. What we do is we go to IKEA and buy the lamp with battery in there and make sure we recycle the battery. So now we don't have smoke or, burning things and all those things. So one of the things I'm going to do tomorrow in our center is that we bought the IKEA lamps to be able to replace our old lamps. We have to be environmentally friendly. So again, while we are introspecting, contemplating, reflecting, meditating, praying to divinity for many people, we see that we have to embrace that nature and our ecology itself, that divinity that we are meditating upon, and that which many people are praying. And we have to first respect that before we do anything. I love this quote. So we see that, we have gone through a continuum of evolution, right? From the single cell right up to more complex cellular, whether one believes in evolution or not, but we see that, scientific evidence shows that we as modern thinking human beings have benefited from the evolutionary process. We continue to evolve, and we see that the entire where we are is a continuum. And when we do not pass on that strong genetic code, we see that the future generation, not just our own species, but also all other species will start crumbling, and we start seeing the entire deck of cards coming down. So while we have evolved, we have got to, part of that evolution is to think that what we do has an impact on the future. So again, our purpose on earth here is to manifest the very nature of our spirit, which is touched by the spirit itself. And one of the things that, in Mahan's chapter he speaks about is that a part of the creator, our divine nature is from the creator itself, nature itself. We've got to become nature-centric, right? And not be very materialistic and short-term thinking, because that will lead us to a path of, destruction. So we have to, part of this meditational process is to go back to the nature-centric and feel nature and divinity at the core of our being. I want to end with a very nice quote, though I did not put it here. There's a beautiful quote by Native Americans, which says that we don't inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. Let me repeat that. We don't inherit the earth from our ancestors, but we borrow it from our children. When we borrow it from our children, if we leave the earth in a mess, that is going to mess up their lives and their children's lives and the future generation. If we leave a lot of pollution, a lot of microplastics, a lot of contaminants in the earth, that is what's going to end up in the body, in the biological systems of our future generation. And we're going to see a lot of challenges that they will have to face. So as Mahan said, and all the other great saints says, let's go back to our home, which is nature itself, and learn from nature. Ensure our thoughts are nature-centric, ensure our words are nature-centric, ensure our actions are nature-centric, so that we resonate, in the vibration of nature and live an enlightened life as nature is, in a natural way. Sandosham.